The silence in Jack Whitman's apartment had become a comfort and a curse. At 47, Jack had lived alone for almost 12 years, since his last serious relationship ended in a mutual but painful split. The breakup with Lisa had been slow and inevitable, two people drifting apart despite their best intentions. What followed for Jack wasn't bitterness or anger, but rather a quiet, creeping numbness. At first, he thought he needed time to recover. Then the time turned into habit. Habit into lifestyle. Jack worked remotely as a software engineer, managing code and teams from the corner of his minimalist apartment in Portland. His life was simple: early morning jogs, black coffee, and long hours in front of glowing screens. He spoke to colleagues through video calls, nodded politely at neighbors, and waved to the barista at his usual coffee spot. But real connection? Intimacy? Vulnerability? Those were packed away in a box somewhere deep in his heart, collecting dust. He didn't realize how isolated he'd become until a moment one Tuesday morning in June. Jack had just finished his jog, walking past a park near his apartment. A young couple sat under a tree, laughing about something. The guy tossed popcorn into the girl's mouth, and she caught it, giggling as she leaned into him. That was when it hit Jack, not loneliness, but the sheer unfamiliarity of it. Affection. Laughter. The kind of playful, unscripted joy that once came easily. Jack tried dating apps briefly over the years, but the idea of starting from scratch again made him anxious. The conversations felt forced. He wasn't the same man he was in his 30s. Now, he overanalyzed every word he typed, every emoji he used. Would she think this was too boring? Too forward? Too old-fashioned? And God forbid a woman suggested a video call. He'd find an excuse to delay it until she stopped responding altogether. His friends had noticed the change too. Darren, his college buddy, and one of the few people Jack still spoke to regularly, had tried nudging him toward dating again. "You're not dead, Jack," he said over beers one evening. "You're just in hibernation." "I'm fine alone," Jack would reply with a shrug, avoiding eye contact. But the truth was more complex. The longer Jack went without a relationship, the more he internalized ideas about himself that weren't always accurate. He'd begun to believe he wasn't desirable anymore, that he wouldn't know how to be a good partner even if someone gave him the chance. That intimacy had an expiration date, and he'd missed it. One evening in August, Jack's routine was interrupted by a phone call. His Aunt Patricia had passed away, and there would be a small memorial service in Salem, about an hour's drive from Portland. Patricia had always been kind to Jack, sending birthday cards even after years of silence. He felt a duty to go, even though he hated funerals. The service was quiet, emotional, and filled with people he hadn't seen in years. Afterward, at the small reception in the community hall, Jack stood awkwardly by the cookie table until he heard a familiar voice say, "Jack Whitman? From Miller High." He turned and was met with a pair of warm green eyes. "Megan Owens?" Jack asked, surprised. Megan had been his prom date 29 years ago. They'd stayed friends for a while in college before life sent them in different directions. She looked a little older, sure, but still had the same quick smile and calming voice. They caught up over coffee in the corner, talking about work, family, life. Megan had 2 grown kids and had been divorced for 5 years. "Dating feels like a comedy show now," she joked. Swipe left on the ones with sunglasses in every photo. Swipe right if they've mentioned their dog 3 times. Jack laughed more in that hour than he had in months. Megan was smart, grounded, and real. She wasn't trying to impress anyone, just being herself. Before she left, she touched his hand and said, "We should catch up properly sometime. You live in Portland still, right?" Jack nodded, feeling something flutter in his chest that had long been dormant. That night, Jack sat at his desk, phone in hand, staring at her number. He wanted to text her, but a voice in his head whispered, "What if she's just being polite?" That old self-doubt had become his shadow, lurking behind every attempt at connection. But this time he pushed back. He typed out a simple message. "It was really good to see you today. Let me know if you'd like to meet for coffee sometime." The reply came within minutes. "I'd love that. How about this weekend?" Over the next few weeks, Jack and Megan began meeting regularly: coffee, walks, museums. Their conversations were easy and deep. They talked about aging, about their careers, about the fear of starting over. Jack admitted to her one evening, "I think the longer I went without being with someone, the more I forgot how to be with someone." Megan smiled gently. "It's like riding a bike. A little wobbly at first, but you don't forget." Her reassurance was more powerful than Jack could have anticipated. Over time, he noticed how much he'd changed without realizing it. He had become more careful with his words, almost overly cautious. He avoided eye contact sometimes, afraid of revealing too much. And when Megan would reach out to touch his arm during a joke, he'd flinch, not because he didn't want it, but because the physical affection was so unfamiliar. One day, while sitting in a park together, Megan said something that stuck with him. "Jack, you don't have to perform or impress me. Just be." That sentence cracked something open inside of him. He didn't need to be the most interesting, charming, or fit man in the room. He just needed to show up, emotionally present. With Megan's gentle encouragement, Jack began reconnecting with parts of himself he had shut away. He started writing again, something he hadn't done since college. His short stories were raw and honest, reflecting his fears, hopes, and the weight of loneliness. He joined a local writers group, something he would have never dared to do months ago. He even got a few pieces published in small literary magazines, which Megan proudly shared with her friends. Jack also reached out to Darren more often, rekindling their friendship in a deeper way. They began having regular guy nights again, and Jack found himself opening up more about regrets, about fears of growing old alone, about hopes he didn't know he still had. One night, Megan invited him to a dinner party with some of her friends. Jack hesitated. His social anxiety flared. But he went. And to his surprise, he held conversations, laughed, and felt normal. Not like the lonely man out of practice. Not like someone too far gone. Jack and Megan's relationship wasn't perfect. They had their moments of tension, their differences in routine. Jack still struggled with expressing his feelings sometimes, and Megan, being more emotionally fluent, had to learn patience. But they cared. They worked through things. And most importantly, they kept showing up for each other. Months turned into a year. On their first anniversary, Megan gave Jack a framed photo of the two of them at the Oregon coast, standing side by side, wind in their hair, smiling like they belonged there. "You look alive in this," she said. Jack held the frame, his throat tightening. "I feel alive in this." The longer a man has been without a relationship, the more he builds walls he forgets how to tear down. The more he creates a version of himself shaped by solitude, not by connection.